Hello, it's Dawn Michelle from Boho Tarot, and welcome to my monthly reflections. Today we're going to be talking about the decks that I worked with in January of 2022, and then we're going to take a look at my tarot journals. So in January, or in all of 2022, I am changing up my tarot practice a little bit, where I am doing the monthly medicine, which is a guided tarot journey alongside all of my weavers as part of the membership here on my YouTube channel. And every month I create a guided practice that we are doing together. So to go along with that practice, I chose 3 decks that I wanted to focus in on for those particular prompts. And our practice for January was rooting into practice. So we were really focused on setting our intention, setting up good practices for tarot, and kind of cultivating and getting a base and a framework set up for the practice that we're going to be doing throughout the whole year. So I chose decks for that felt very kind of rooted into my own personal practice, and decks that felt very in tune with just me in general. So the 3 decks that I chose for that are Gentle Tarot, the Spacious Tarot, and then I also included the Roots and Wings Oracle. So I think these 3 decks actually read really well together. Individually, they're all really strong readers in my collection, and I really enjoy working with each and every one of them. The Gentle Tarot definitely feels like it has a gentle energy. It's one of my absolute favorite decks. It has a really wonderful, earthy, kind of shamanic vibe to it, intentional, very inclusive, and it definitely feels like it taps into something that resonates deep within me from a very deep space. So for me, I chose the Gentle Tarot because it felt very rooted into who I am. Let's just take a quick peek at the cards here. I'm sure you've seen this deck before. I've shown it many times on my channel as well. It's gorgeous artwork. I love the intention behind this deck. I'm going to try not to gush about it too much because I do that quite often every time I use this deck. It's one that I use all the time in my own personal practice, and so it felt very well suited for working with for the rooting into practice monthly medicine, because it definitely represented kind of me in this place where I am in my life at this time. So I chose the Spacious Tarot for this practice as well, because it definitely feels like it is kind of embodies the outer world beautifully. So whereas the Gentle Tarot is kind of like my inner world, the Spacious Tarot kind of reflects the outer world. It shows a little bit more about kind of where I live in terms of a physical sense, right? I live in the Pacific Northwest. We have lots of trees, lots of beautiful landscapes here, and I think all of that is depicted beautifully in this deck as well. But I also feel that it really works beautifully with my own particular practice and my own particular reading style, because it is very much in alignment with numerological and elemental readings, and that is my primary reading style. So I feel like this one really taps into how I work with the tarot. So I chose the Spacious Tarot because it represents kind of my practice with the tarot on the whole, as in it's kind of simple, it's kind of understated, and it's very much kind of rooted into the idea of self, into the idea of space, and into the numerological and elemental associations, more so than kind of tapping into that sort of Waite-Smith interpretation, which you can definitely see in this deck as well, but are not limited to reading it that way. So I just felt like the Spacious Tarot really represented that kind of outer world and the way that I work with the tarot in general. And again, the Gentle Tarot really represented that kind of inner sense of self. And then the Roots and Wings Oracle is just a beautiful, really well-balanced oracle deck. I do also have the mini version of this one as well, but I used this full-size one because it, fit really well with the cards. And this was just kind of a wonderful deck to use for kind of the wrap-ups, things that I wanted to focus on. It works really well when the prompts are kind of, here's what to focus on, here's what to walk away with. Whereas the tarot decks really provide that kind of deeper foundational message. This deck really just tapped into the kind of takeaway message or the focal point for the reading, and it works really well for that. It's a deck that I use all the time in focal points. It's also a deck that I use all the time when I kind of want to get some sort of an actionable step. It works really well for that as well. I do use the little pamphlet that is in this deck as well, and I think it's quite wonderful, and I really enjoy working with this one. I do love that we have some of the more challenging cards in here, so it definitely feels a bit more balanced, but it does feel like it does exist very much in the space in the world in which I live in and which my practice is engaged in, because that was really what we were focusing on in January, was the idea of rooting into practice. And so these 3 decks really represented kind of where I am and where my practice is at the moment. So again, that is the Gentle Tarot, the Spacious Tarot, and the Roots and Wings Oracle, all favorites in my collection and all decks that I enjoy working with on a regular basis. So something that I'm doing that's a little bit different is I'm focusing on those main decks for the monthly medicine, and that is the main bulk of my practice this year. But I'm also still doing my kind of on the fly readings that I do. I have specific readings that I do for certain purposes, like my moon readings. I have readings that I will do when I just want to kind of check in and work with, have questions or work with just self-communication, kind of communing with my inner self. And for that, I used the Northern Animal Tarot. I spoke about this deck quite a bit at the end of last year too, because I just kind of fell in love with this deck. It is beautiful. It is really nurturing and reassuring most of the time, but I do find that this deck will give it to me straight when I need it. It doesn't shy away from the truth by any stretch of the imagination. And this deck has just been a really wonderful all-around reader for me, and I've used it for all kinds of different readings throughout the month, whether I'm just kind of looking to check in with self or I'm looking to get a little advice or information about a situation. This deck works really beautiful for that. I do really like the anthropomorphized animals. I feel like these are characters that I can relate to really well, and that's been a really big shift for me because animal decks haven't been a staple of my practice really at all to this point. And it was kind of this deck that kind of made me fall in love with the idea of animals in place of the people. So that really anthropomorphized animal energy. And I feel that it works really well. I'm just able to connect with these characters a lot better than I can connect with the characters that look like people. I do find that there are certain styles of people in decks that I tend to resonate with more than others, like the line work kind of energy that we saw in the Gentle Tarot works really well for me, but sometimes some of the photo manipulation decks don't, because the people don't really represent my world, right? But this kind of takes that whole element out of the experience. And these feel like just characters in this wonderful little like storybook that I can connect to and that I can have this beautiful conversation with and interact with. And it just works really well. I think the artwork is so charming. It makes me smile every time I pull this deck out. And that's definitely something that I look for in a tarot deck for just an everyday reader. Does it read well? Does it translate well? Does it communicate with me in a sense that I can understand, which is very important, because nothing worse than throwing down cards and looking at them going, I have no idea what you're trying to tell me here. I don't have that struggle with this deck. It's a very clear and easy reader for me. And I just enjoy working with it. I enjoy looking through it. I enjoy shuffling it. This is the first edition, and I have mentioned in other videos that I re-rounded the corners, so I used a larger corner on them to make them just a little bit rounder, a little softer. I edged it in this beautiful yellow color. This is the imperfect edition, so it has flaws, but I love every flaw in this deck, so that doesn't bother me at all. It shuffles like a dream. I absolutely love shuffling it. I love working with it, and I really enjoy laying down cards and getting just a quick, wonderful message from this deck. I find that it reads very intuitive in that way as well, so I can just lay my cards down, see what it has to tell me. It gives me a little story, and I just really enjoy that about this deck. So it's definitely become one of my favorites in my collection, and it is the deck that I used all throughout January to just have my general readings. It was kind of just my all-purpose, all-around reader deck. And you'll see when we take a look at my journals kind of what I mean by having the two separate sides of my practice for 2022. So this month, my main deck was the Northern Animal Tarot, and I still am in love with this deck. I absolutely love it. I am going to put it away for February just so I can have the opportunity to work with something else, but it will probably always stay pretty close at hand so I can just grab it whenever I need to connect to these beautiful animal energies. So another practice that I kind of engaged in throughout January, which was a kind of on-the-fly practice. It wasn't something I set out to do. It was something that kind of came out of my monthly reading that I did, which I'll show you when we get to my tarot journal. But I decided to do some work with the archetype or energy or history of Mary Magdalene, kind of getting into all those different avenues. I have a book that I read in relation to that, and I ended up working with a couple of decks that I just happened to have that I had bought a while ago that I wasn't sure I was going to be able to use or really connect with, and that is the Magdalene Oracle. This one is the Tony Carmine Salerno deck. And then this deck that I just happened to randomly find on Amazon, which is the Mary Magdalene Sisterhood of the Rose Power Cards. That is a mouthful. The Magdalene Oracle I've had for quite some time, and I had kind of set it aside as like something to take a look at. I've talked before about the Tony Carmine Salerno set of decks and the artwork. I do find repeated images across different decks, and that really does bother me. I am kind of moving along any of the decks that have that repeated artwork, because for me, I've worked so closely with the Tarot of Light, which is all Tony Carmine Salerno artwork, that whenever I see those images, it automatically brings to mind the tarot association that I have with them. So I'm finding that decks that have the same artwork as that tarot deck does don't tend to stay in my collection very long. But I have been enjoying working with the Magdalene Oracle. One of the things that I really enjoyed about this deck was that, having started diving into kind of a little bit of study of Mary Magdalene and reading the Magdalene Mysteries, I kind of have a little bit of a better understanding about where these keywords are coming from, as in applying them to the teachings of Mary Magdalene versus just looking at those keywords in a general sense. And so that's been really interesting to look at these cards and to use these cards in this way. This deck, however, the Mary Magdalene Sisterhood of the Rose, is a deck I just happened to stumble across on Amazon. I have never seen it anywhere before, and as you can see here, I paired these two decks together to kind of give me a focal point with the Magdalene Oracle and expand upon that message with the Sisterhood of the Rose deck. And I actually really enjoyed the readings. They were very potent. They almost always related back to what I happened to be reading in the Magdalene Mysteries book, so that was really interesting. I will have to say that, like, the artwork, let's just take a quick peek because nobody's ever shown this deck that I've ever seen. The artwork is not always my favorite in this deck. Some of it's photo collage, and some of it's done nicely, and some of it I think kind of misses the mark a little bit for me. There's definitely some imagery in here that I don't resonate with. There are some of the images are a little fuzzy, a little pixelated. This is a very inexpensive deck available on Amazon too, so there's a little bit of forgiveness there for that. But I do have to say that I really like the messages, and I really like working with this deck in terms of the readings that it gives. I do go into the little book here and there to kind of get there's little messages. Just really little messages, along with messages from Mary Magdalene, and I've been using that as well as just, you know, tapping into my own intuition. And I find that these cards really, along with the little book and working with the Magdalene Mysteries book, has really been quite wonderful and quite powerful. I've really been surprised by this deck. Again, like I said, the artwork's not always my favorite, but I do really like the keywords, and I really like the messages that I get in using this deck. It's quite a nice, lovely, balanced deck in terms of the teachings of Mary Magdalene, which I think is really what this deck is focusing in on. And it's quite lovely. So yeah, it's kind of a surprise deck for me in that sense, is that, you know, I wasn't really expecting to like it, to be perfectly honest. The backs are actually quite lovely. It is gold gilded, and it's not fancy gold gilding, but it doesn't bother me any, and I don't know if that's because there's just not that many cards to this deck. but I don't have any trouble working with it, so that's fine. This is one of the Blue Angel decks. Unfortunately, it is the glossy version. I do not know if this deck has been released in matte yet. If it has been, I might be tempted to purchase it. Although, to be perfectly honest, although I love the pairings of them together with this deck in the center as the focal point, I don't know that I really need it, having the Mary Magdalene's Sisterhood of the Rose deck. Because again, I'm having that issue of seeing the cards, you know, images that are represented in the tarot deck that I'm so familiar with. Also, there are some cards that go horizontal and that just, or landscape, and that just bugs me to no end. I have a tendency to pull these cards out of the deck, but then I'm missing those energies in my deck. So it's not always something I like to do. The artwork is really beautiful, and I do quite like the keywords, especially when you're looking at it in terms of working with Mary Magdalene and the teachings of the Magdalene. But again, I don't know if this is one that I will keep long term. It's been fun to get to know, and I do really enjoy the artwork. There are some cards in here with artwork that I hadn't seen before, like as in I haven't seen them in other Oracle decks that I have. So I might be tempted to keep it in that sense. But if I had to choose between the two, I would definitely choose the Mary Magdalene Sisterhood of the Rose, only because it was just such a solid reader for me, and I really enjoyed the messages that I got from it. But this is a very lovely deck as well. I'm not like ready to move it on at this point. I would love to maybe get it in a matte version or possibly trim it. Maybe remove those sideways cards, because that really does bother me quite a bit. But I also love that, you know, it's got a pretty good balance of cards and imagery for a Magdalene Oracle. So I quite enjoyed that about it. Here's what the backs look like. Again, very, very shiny. But again, two decks that I really enjoyed working with throughout the month. And I did receive really, really interesting, really profound readings with them, particularly in relation to working with the Magdalene Mysteries book. So again, that was the Magdalene Oracle and the Mary Magdalene Sisterhood of the Rose. Now, I did also work with a couple of other kind of random decks here and there. I used the Barbara Walker Tarot and the Witch's Oracle for my new moon reading. I used the Mother's Wisdom deck for my full moon reading. You'll see those in my tarot journal. And occasionally I would just grab, you know, like my Old Faithful Llewellyn to do some readings here and there. But another deck that I worked with consistently throughout the month is actually the Wild Goddess Oracle. I think that's what this one's called. It has the messages on the back. And this is the deck that I used for my daily oracle pull, which I put in my planner actually. So it doesn't go in any sort of tarot journal. I note the card and I write the message from the back of the card on my daily planner page. And that's been a practice I've been doing for I think most of 2021 and then clear into 2022 obviously, and I'm still doing it. I really enjoyed using this deck for it. I love the artwork in this deck. It's getting a really weird bow in it. I don't know if that's just because the way I'm storing it. I have made a bag for it, or possibly humidity or something like that. But anyway, I adore the artwork. This is by, Farber and Zerner. I think that's their name. The same people who did the, like the Creativity Oracle and what's the other one? The Enchanted Tarot? I don't have that one, but I love this artwork. I wasn't sure because it was like, it's a goddess deck. And I was like, I don't really need another goddess deck. But one of the things that drew me to this deck for this particular practice was the fact that the messages are on the card. And for that particular practice in my just everyday use, I prefer to use oracle decks where the message is on the card, because then I don't have to like go searching for a guidebook or go flip through to try to find the message. It's really convenient. It's all right there, and it just kind of hangs out with my daily planner, so that I can real quick pull a card in the morning, look at the image, get my message, write it down in my daily planner, and then away I go. And so I'm finding that I really prefer cards that have the messages on the card in some way, shape, or form, either on the bottom or on the back. And because it just makes it so much easier for a daily card pull, because these are cards that I pull a single card every single day and I incorporate into my daily planner. And it's kind of like my energy for the day, my message to carry with me throughout my just everyday, not my tarot practice or anything, just my everyday life. And I really enjoyed using this one. The artwork is beautiful. I really quite like the images. I love this one. This is one of my favorites. It's, you know, mixed media collage. It's just stunning. It's a very well done deck. And I did find that I did quite enjoy the messages on the back. They are, in a sense, kind of generic, but that actually works, I think, for a daily card pull because it really does allow it to tap into certain aspects of your day, because I would get like the same card, you know, once or twice in the month, and it would relate to different things throughout my day. And so I always find that interesting. So I do actually quite like the messages. That a little bit kind of vagueness actually works really well for a daily card pull. And I've enjoyed them. I enjoyed them quite a bit. And I enjoyed the sort of energies and archetypes of the people represented in this, or the wild goddesses. They're not listed as goddesses. We have like the free spirit, the balancer, the ruler, the grace, the hopeful, the game changer, the survivor. So, I mean, it is archetypes, but it's also kind of energies to tap into. So I found that really quite lovely, and I really enjoyed working with this deck in that sense. It was a beautiful deck for a daily card pull, and definitely one that I will be keeping and using again for that practice. So again, that one is the Wild Goddesses Oracle deck. So the other deck I used for a daily card pull is my Thoth. Now, I'm not gonna like get this whole out because we've seen this deck like a million times, not only on my channel or on everybody else's, but I did in January start my daily card Thoth pull. So every day I pull a card from the Thoth Tarot. I would write a little bit about what I learned from that, about that card in this book. And I was using this book in particular. This is Tarot Mirror of the Soul by Gert Ziegler. So I really enjoy the messages in the book. I love the way that he presents the cards. It's very thoughtful, but very clear and easy to understand. I think it's a great reference for something like a daily card pull. There's just enough information to kind of get you going. There are keywords in here, which I found quite helpful. There's also an indication to kind of give you an idea of what that card might be relating to, a question to ask yourself. Then we also have for every card a suggestion of what to do next and an affirmation. So I in particular used the indication and the affirmation quite a bit in my own particular practice. But basically what I was doing was pulling a card every day. In the morning, I would come to the book, I would read a little bit about it, I would note the keywords, I would note the indication and the affirmation in my digital tarot journal, and then I would write a little bit about the card, trying to kind of take what I've read here, what I've learned so far about working with the Thoth, and then kind of transferring that into my own language. And I would write a little bit about that. And then I, at the end of the day, I would come back and I would reflect on that card and how it related to my day specifically. So that's been a really interesting practice, because that's not something I've done in a very long time, where I pull a card in the morning and here's my energy for the day, or what I need to keep aware of or be mindful about, and then to reflect back at the end of the day how that actually showed up in my day. That's been really interesting. I haven't done that practice for a very long time, so it's been really fun to reconnect with that. But as I mentioned with my weavers, and I did a whole video on it, I do tend to get bored with daily card draws, doing the same thing over and over again. So I'm going to be switching things up. In terms of how I do the practice, I'm still going to be pulling a Thoth card every day, still going to be connecting with the practice in that way, but how I go about it and other practices or things that I might integrate into that daily practice will change and shift and ebb and flow over the year. So those were the main decks that I worked with all throughout the month. Again, like I said, I had a few decks here and there that I pulled into practice for various things, but those were the main decks that I worked with. The Gentle Tarot, the Spacious Tarot, the Roots and Wings, those were all decks that I used for my monthly medicine, which we'll see in here. Then we had the Magdalene Oracle, the Mary Magdalene Sisterhood of the Rose, and my Thoth, and my Northern Animal Tarot that I used for just kind of everyday tarot readings that I did. And we'll see that in my digital tarot journal. So that's been a huge change for me for 2022. I am still using a paper journal, but I'm also using a digital journal now as well, and I'll show you that here in a moment. But let's take a look at my tarot journal. This journal now has been kind of dedicated to my yearly readings and my monthly medicine practice. So I don't know if I mentioned in the last video, I picked up a new cover for it. This is just, it's the same Darcy as it was before. It's just in a little bit darker color with different pockets. I've just got some stuff in here. This is my yearly calendar, which I plan to just update this cover seasonally. So when we get to spring, I'll probably switch out the cover to something that looks a little bit more spring-like. You'll see this butterfly. This is from the pocket edition of the Gentle Tarot. You'll see that kind of motif throughout my journal because that is my card of the year for this year, and that's the deck that I did my year ahead reading with. So my calendar here has been really fun. This is basically my monthly medicine calendar where I kind of note the prompts that we are doing every month, and then I draw a little indication. This month I did a little plant, a little indication of when I've completed each of those so that I can look through here and know that those are all done. I've also included the moon phases because those are days that I do like to do readings. So this is just kind of a calendar to kind of keep me on practice, to keep me on track with my practice, and to note the particular readings that I want to do in any given month. So I know if it's in here, it's important to me and I want to do it. So that just kind of helps kind of keep me on track with my practice and keep me working on the things that I want to be working on and cultivating throughout the year. So I'll be filling this one out here shortly for February and adding in all the prompts for the monthly medicine for that month. So then we have my middle insert, which is basically my yearly readings. Now I created this insert. I basically printed out a new cover. I used the Lovers card, again, like I said, from the pocket edition of the Gentle Tarot to create my cover here, printed that off and rebound my book because as you can see, my card for this year is the Lovers card. So in here I have, I skipped a page. Here it is, 2022, Year of the Lover. I've left a blank space down here because when I get the new Gentle Tarot guidebook, I want to include a write-up from the Lovers for it. So here is my year ahead spread with the Gentle Tarot. I pulled a card for every month, and you'll see here that I'm integrating that card into my readings, my monthly readings at the start of every month. I have not done my Wheel of the Year yet because I'm going to be using the Wildwood Tarot for that, and I'm going to be following along with the book, and the book talks about entering the wheel at Imbolc, so that is when I'm going to lay my Wheel of the Year, which is different than how I've normally done it in the past, so that'll be really interesting, but I'm looking forward to starting that one soon. So every month I'm doing a council reading where I pull whatever card is my card for that month. So for January, you'll see my card is the Two of Cups. So I pulled my Two of Cups and I laid my counsel around it, which is my inner self. That's the center card, which is telling me what to bring forth from within me. I have a guide to help me lead the way, and I was using the Sacred Mothers and Goddesses, and I happened to pull the Mary Magdalene card, and this was what started the whole Mary Magdalene thing that I did all month long, connecting with the Magdalene Mysteries book, reading it, which was a book that I bought a long time ago in 2021 and had never gotten around to using, so I thought, this is a sign, this is a perfect opportunity, as well as working with those two Magdalene decks that I have. I pulled an ally and a plant medicine, an animal ally and a plant medicine, on either side from the Flora and Fauna decks. And then I have my message, which was Foundation, and that one I pulled from the Mother's Wisdom. It just felt whatever deck I felt called to use for that. And then I have my message for the month. So you can see in February, my card is the Ace of Cups here. So that is the card that I'll be pulling in that center space. And then I'll be doing my council reading around it. And I'm always looking at it through the lens of the Lovers as well. So I've got plenty of space in here to continue that practice on, to have one guiding counsel reading for every month. I'm hoping that this will help me to connect with my year ahead spread, because a lot of times I do these and by like March, April, I've totally forgotten that I've done this. So I'm hoping this will help me connect with this practice and to be a bit more mindful about these cards. And I'm really curious to see how these will reflect at the end of the year. So that is what is in the center book here. And then in my back book here, I have my monthly medicine, and this is Archer and Olive, same as I was using last year in the B6 size. This is my intention for the year. Again, this relates back to the monthly medicine. So I have my intention, I have my card of the year here. This here is the cover page that I've created. I've tipped in of vellum, which I printed the title for the monthly medicine for January here. And then I've got the decks that I worked with, and then we'll move into the work that we did. So every week we have 3 prompts basically per week, or in most full weeks, and every week focuses on a theme. Each theme builds on the one before it. So our first one was seed and talking about our relationship to the tarot. These all have specific prompts to them, which I'm not going to be sharing in this journal because this is just my cards and my reflections on those prompts. Prompts are actually given out in a video that I do, as well as in a PDF that I provide as well. So we have our medicine spread, which we do every Wednesday. We have our reflection spread, which reflects back on what we've kind of learned and accomplished throughout the week. Again, you can see I was using the Gentle Tarot, the Spacious Tarot, and the Roots and Wings, and you'll see that that's the 3 decks that I used for this entire practice. So a lot of times with the 3 card readings, I would use one from each deck to kind of help me tap into those different energies. In some of the larger readings, I would mix and match. This one is all Spacious Tarot with the 2 Roots and Wings on either side for those particular positions. All of these spreads do have positions, but again, I just haven't noted them in here because those are specific to those practices. And you can see here that again, I've just pulled the 3 different cards for my reflection. So into the next week, we had the stem, which was talking about our lessons from the past. Again, you can see I pulled a card from each of those decks. Did a lot of doodle work in this one. It was a lot of fun. I love doing doodle work in association with the Gentle Tarot and the Spacious Tarot. Both of those decks just kind of pull that kind of doodly energy out of me, and I want to always doodle all over the pages whenever I'm working with those decks. So here's the stem medicine that we did working with the Gentle Tarot. And then we had the stem reflection. And again, you can see I used the 3 different cards here. This one was fun because they pulled the rainbow in across, trying to match up the colors as best I could with my Tombow. I always try to pull one element out of one of the cards that really stands out to me and incorporate that in some way into the journal page. So here we have our thorn moving into the next week where we were talking about our challenges. Again, you can see I'm working with those 3 decks here. And I pulled in this 7 of Wands energy down here in this doodle work as well. Here's the thorn medicine. This one was fun. I tried to connect all the cards to make one image. So it kind of starts with this watery energy down to this cliff energy, and then we have some of this here. I didn't connect the whale, but I was playing as well. But I was trying to show that it's all connected, right? It's all together. This is the medicine for thorn. Then we have our thorn reflection, which was a fun one. Just reflecting back on our current challenges. Then we have the soil week, which was the next week that we did. It was all about nurturing our growth and how we can support our growth. So there is my cards I pulled for that. And with doodle work that I did, I don't know what I was doing. I was pulling in elements from each of the cards. So I have kind of these florals here, these plants here. I have the cup here, and these little plants were supposed to represent that little seed there. So that was fun. I do really enjoy this. It's very time consuming, but it's time that I really enjoy spending with my cards and with my journal. So this one in this soil medicine, you can see I had a lot to say about it, and there were a lot of cards, so I didn't do any additional kind of doodle work or artwork on the page. It's just really the cards in my reflection. And then we have the soil wrap up and kind of a quote and just, pulling in some different energies. I think these were these little flowers from here and the little, whatever that is, sky thing. Whatever I feel called to pull in, that's what I pull in. And that's it for my printed tarot journal, or my paper tarot journal, I should say. So just all of the prompts from the monthly medicine. This has been a really wonderful practice. I've really enjoyed it, and I've really enjoyed sharing it with all of the weavers. That's been the best part, to talk about these prompts and our readings and our reflections, and to really work together and support each other. And this whole practice has, I think, been the best part for me, but I've really enjoyed it. So that was January's monthly medicine, which was rooting into practice. If you are interested in taking part, again, that's part of my Weaver membership on my channel, and there'll be a link for it in the description box below. We are going to be doing Initiating the Inner Voice for February, which is going to be a lot of fun. I'm really excited about that one. So that is what is in my paper tarot journal, which is all of my monthly medicine and my year ahead readings, and my monthly reading as well. So kind of like my really deep personal readings are all going in here. But on the flip side of that, I have all of my other just kind of normal practice readings, or any other reading that I do, I'm now doing digitally, which has been a lot of fun. So let's take a look at that. So I started in January creating a digital tarot journal. I am going to share kind of some of my tips and things that I've learned over the last month in an upcoming video this month. So keep an eye out for that if you are interested. But basically what I did was create this little cover page in Photoshop and added it to a template that I purchased that has monthly tabs down the side, and we'll see that here in a moment. Now this started off as a very basic Good Notes template that I have basically tweaked and added to along the way. So here we have my little calendar for the year and an image that I made in Photoshop with some digital stickers that I added in Good Notes itself. I can click on any one of these tabs to jump to a different month, but obviously the only thing I have in here so far is January. One of the things that I added to this particular template is a year of decks, where I can create a little splash page of the main deck that I'm using for just everyday reading. So in January, as I mentioned, I was using the Northern Animal Tarot as my main tarot deck. Here's my cover page that I created for January, again tapping into that energy of the Northern Animal Tarot. Now, I left this page because I did this New Year potential reading actually on paper originally. And it was shortly after I did this particular reading that I decided to try digital tarot journaling, because it was going to allow me a little bit more freedom in what I could write about and add in here. So this was a spread that I pulled out of the Tarot by the Moon book, and so I can just get that book back out and write down the prompts that I had in there. So then we have my new moon in Capricorn reading. I was using the Barbara Walker Tarot and the Witches Oracle. Again, this was another spread from the Tarot by the Moon book. And then we have the Simple Sunday spread, and these are spreads that I'm doing on my Boho Tarot Tribe Facebook group. So if you want to grab those every Sunday, you can hop on over and join me there. I do want to note I'm no longer on Instagram. I'm not posting on that platform currently. So if you're looking for my spreads, they're all going to be in my Facebook group, and that will be the best place to grab them from here on out. And as I mentioned, on Tuesdays, I was doing a Working with the Magdalene with my Magdalene Oracle and the Mary Magdalene Sisterhood of the Rose Oracle, just doing a 3-card pull with those. So that's that reflection. Again, I did just a general grounded check-in reading with the Northern Animal Tarot. So I've added my cards in here, and I've got my little doodles and my reflection. So there's the Sunday. Here was the full moon in Cancer reading that I did with the Mother's Wisdom deck. Beautiful deck. I love working with it. The whole energy for that particular full moon was connecting to the Divine Mother, so that deck felt really succinct with that. So here we have our Working with the Magdalene again on Tuesday, another Sunday, another Tuesday. You can see I didn't do a lot in between because, again, remember I was doing the monthly medicine every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So that's a lot of tarot all in one week. And here's my final one, which is for Sunday with the Simple Sunday spread from the Facebook group. So I've also been doing my daily Thoth card pulls in my digital tarot journal as well. I've got a little template that I created for that so that I can have access to a monthly calendar to put all my cards in that I pull each day. And then I have a page for every day of the month so I can pull my card and do my reflections and my write-ups for the day and connect with that practice there as well. So that's been actually really handy and a lot of fun to do. I've got an entire digital copy of my Thoth now, so I can real easily get my cards in there, and it's been really fun, and I've really enjoyed that practice as well. So there you go. That is a look at the decks that I worked with all throughout January of 2022, the tarot journal pages that I created, and the practices that I've been engaging in throughout the whole month. Those are practices that I will be continuing into February as well. So we'll be able to check in and see what decks I'm using for those at the end of that month. So I would love to know what decks you worked with in January. Did you have any standout favorites? I really was impressed by the Mary Magdalene Sisterhood of the Rose. Like I said, not so much in terms of the artwork. I mean, it's fine, but not so much in terms of the artwork, but just in the way that it reads. The Northern Animal Tarot is always a favorite in my collection, as is the Gentle Tarot. Those three, I think, were kind of like the really top decks that I really enjoyed the most so far in January. And again, if you'd like to join us for the monthly medicine for the guided tarot practice, there's a link for that in the description box below for you. As always, my friends, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I look forward to seeing you again soon as we grow together with the tarot.